Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Expected Buffalo, the podcast. I'm Chad Didi and back with us, Anthony Sandra. It actually hasn't been that long because the last one we did was the prospect one, which wasn't that long ago, believe it or not.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been that long, but it does feel like a long time. Any amount of time without you, Chad, feels like a long time to me.
I miss you, and you're broken down over there. It's a
I'm
tear,
okay. I'll be
shames.
okay. Don't
We'll
worry
push
about
through.
it. Don't worry about the old man. I'll be okay.
That is the funny part. Is like we always call you the old man, and you're younger than me. Is the crazy part. But every time I talk, like, oh yeah, I got this burnt knee, and then my back hurts, and I got to get this double hip surgery or something will be
That's
next.
never happened. What are we doing here? But yeah, no, you're right. I don't know why physiologically I've started breaking down like a 70-year-old man, but yeah, I also look the part. I think my body's just aging with my face. It's just
Yeah.
like a real cruel twist of fate. I blame it on the Sabres. The Sabres have aged me. Speaking of which, let's
I mean
talk
that's fair.
about let's talk
Let-
about these goobers in blue and gold, and they were about to
This is
start a season.
this is the fun time of the year.
This is
This
a
is when
fun
we're
time.
all excited. Everyone's all happy. Yeah, we're gonna make the playoffs. It'll be awesome, and everyone's gonna do great. And
All those things.
then it takes a couple weeks, and we all get our actually. It might take a weekend in Prague for our souls to be sucked back out, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Let's not be negative too much here. Um, okay, so season preview podcast.
Mhm.
We're gonna go through the roster, different levels. We're gonna go through Lindy rough. Season predictions, like more along the lines people know of like just overall playoff team, not playoff team points, stuff like that. We're not gonna get into the weeds on goals, points.
Individual
You want that?
players.
Anthony did that for you in a written form, so you can go get that there. There was some good stuff in there, by the way. I like some of the things you put in
Thanks.
there. There's some good things. I might even pull them out later, depending on how
All
we're
right,
going.
I'm down.
Okay, so let's start.
I was told there'd be no fact checking.
That's good. Good. Look at you, right back in there.
Right back at it, mid-season
I
form
get it.
over here.
Oh, that's good line. High level. So we did this last time we did a podcast, me and you. I have this thing now where, well, because I do a lot of these like these quick hitters on myself, and I just talk too much. So what I want to do here, like I did last time, is instead of me rambling on, because I literally will just ramble for 15 minutes, but no one stops
Mhm.
me. I'm gonna let you go first and kind of just talk about very high level where you're at, what your mood is, what you're feeling. Don't feel like I get into the weeds. We're gonna get into that. If we get into some stuff like a little deeper, perfectly fine. But this is kind of a tone setter, if you will. It
Okay.
is October 2nd. The season starts in less than 48 hours. Where are you at? What's your vibe?
So I'm going to say something that I think any other year with maybe any other coach, it would be controversial. I don't know. I guess that's what I'll call it. It
Okay.
would be maybe seen as a hot take. I think with this roster and Don Granato still as the head coach, I would be completely disengaged. But looking at Lindy Ruff's historical impacts, which I wrote an article on, how his teams, let's say, respond to his inaugural season and his changes in philosophy, approach, deployment, etc. I am cautiously pretty darn excited, actually, because I think the Sabres. I am because I think
Cautiously
this.
pretty darn excited. That's a new phrase
Yeah,
I'm gonna use.
yeah. It's wild that I over-explain something instantly. It's very on brand. Like I said, man, mid-season form. But yeah, looking at the player prototypes who tend to do well or fare the best initially under Lindy
Mhm.
Ruff, because historically speaking, I mean, whether it's the message or the approach or the whatever, it does tend to sour after a couple of years. But who cares about that? Let's not worry about that right now. That's not a right now problem. The initial impact is strong, and primarily it's strong with puck moving defensemen, which the Sabres have in spades. It's strong with young, dynamic forwards, which again, Sabres have quite a few of. And this might shed a little light on why they went about the offseason the way they did. it's these bottom 6 guys who are wildly fast and tenacious, and pretty much every free agent addition or trade addition too, if you wanna count McLeod, the Sabres made surrounded that revolved around that kind of prototype, again, with whom Ruff tends to get some pretty great results. So, all that to say, I am excited. This is the first year in a long time where I think I have a strong conviction that the Sabres will beat the models, the ones we've seen so far anyway. There are still some that come, but, yeah, so pretty sorta kinda cautiously optimistic, whatever the hell I said initially.
Cautiously very excited.
That's the one.
That's gonna stick all season. I'm
I'm
gonna ask you every time, are you still cautiously what was it? Cautiously very excited.
There you go.
I'm gonna ask you every time. I'm writing it down right now.
I
That's
hope
gonna
you
be our
do.
it's gonna be our it took us 6 minutes and 11 seconds. We have our motto for the season,
M
cautiously very excited.
Amazing.
2024-25 Sabres.
We're back, baby.
Okay. So I think a lot of what you said. Um see I wrote throughout yesterday and then tonight my season preview article that'll go tomorrow.
'Kay.
So as I'm going through it and writing it, I'm still having that inner dilemma with myself, right? So
Okay.
last year around this time I fed into the vibes. Playoff
Okay.
team gonna do it, like, you know, and they didn't or even really come close for a litany of reasons
Mhm.
that we don't need to rehash. Everybody knows them. So I'm at that point again where as I'm going through and look at the additions at forward, I'm like, well, you know, I like a lot of these. They make a lot of sense. The new coach, the system, the fit, it's all bit check, 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 check.
It's all kinda
Uh,
there.
Jack Quinn's healthy. Tage should be fine with his hand. Cousins, you hope he's kind of the wild card for me.
Mm.
Tuck, I think, will bounce back. Paterka take the next step. Benson's getting a chance, and so on and so forth. You go through that. And then I go through it, and I'm like, yeah, but the defense is the same, though. And, and,
Mhm.
and I guess maybe Byram can be better. Maybe Samuelson will stay healthy in a different role. Yoki Horo contract year, maybe. You know, crazier things have happened if he's with Darlene and that works well. Nah. And then the goalies is okay. Lukanen, great
Mhm.
year. But goalies, you know, I mean, you wrote that article that article you wrote always sticks in my head. Like that's what I always go back to is like consistency. It's only 3 or 4 guys.
Mhm.
But I think the important thing here that I put in the Lucan article I did this week when I called him as one of my top 5 key players is if he regresses, which we maybe should expect,
Mhm.
that's okay because you're gonna have other things in your roster that'll fill in for that. But the regression has to be within reason. You can't go from
Right.
5 to 27. You can go from
Mhm.
5 to 10 or 12. That's okay. You can live with that.
Sure.
But you can't go back into the realm where you were before last season because then it gets into Levi and then you're like, oh boy. And then
Mm.
worst case scenario, if you get the Reimer playing more than like 5 games because of injury, then you're in deep trouble.
Mhm.
So that kind of like, well, we'll see. And then maybe the main thing that from a numbers person that I really can't put a number on or articulate in my brain is what is the power play going to be?
'Kay.
It'll be difficult to be worse than last year,
Nearly impossible.
but what is the jump? You
Mm.
look at the talent, should be able to take a significant jump, but
Right.
don't know how do you put something to that? And is the
Right.
jump going to be enough if you go from like arguably the worst power play to not so bad? Or you're going to go
Mm.
to average? Or you're going to go to really good? I think it's
Mhm.
all the different levels you can go here. So where I think I ultimately land is most of them, the models that I put predictions at now have them around 88 points, which I think is fair. It's actually honestly higher than I thought they would be.
Mm.
Um, but I think I'm in that. I like to set ranges. I think 88 to 92 is your range.
Okay.
If you can get to 92 and that gets you in the playoffs, great, then you're in.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 95 this year, unfortunately, well, damn, 14 years. I think that's kind of where I ultimately fall, basically. My whole ramble here is I think they have the potential to get there.
Okay.
I think I probably max them out around 92, 93. But if the playoff cut line is 95, 96, then I think you're in trouble. But the good news is I don't think it's going to be that high. And the reason is because I think the Eastern Conference this year is better. There's
Okay.
not many teams that I would say are horrendous. I mean, for 95, 96 points, you got to have teams get beat up on at the bottom. You're going to have Columbus probably down there.
Washington,
Montreal, I
maybe.
thought, was going to be down there. Maybe a little bit better, but the injuries kind of hurt them. But Liney's not that long, so we'll see how that goes. But beyond that, like in the East, nobody's terrible.
Hmm.
The Atlantic Division is better. I think Ottawa's right there. Boston and Swayman is interesting because how much
Okay.
does that impact them if that doesn't get done? What do you think of Tampa Bay? People have
Right.
different views on that.
You can. I
And
think the
then
team with the widest range of expectations is Ottawa.
right,
You know what I'm
I mean, I
saying?
think Ottawa's exactly the same spot as the Sabres are. If
Probably.
that goalie works and they stay healthy,
Sure.
they could easily be better. I mean, if you
Right.
held me down, I might even tell you that if everything goes well for the Sabres and everything goes well for Ottawa, there's an argument that can be made that Ottawa has the better point standings.
Hmm.
It would be close.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I mean, the models project them pretty comparatively.
Yeah. Detroit, I don't buy. I think they're going to come back down. And
Mm.
then you have to see what the Metro gives you. You're going to, what is Philadelphia this year? How
Right.
big of an impact does Mishkov make? Is it big? Is it not as big as a rookie? We'll have to see. Their goaltending. What are the Islanders under a full season of Patrick Waugh? So there's so many question marks. And then Washington, in theory, what they did, I like the offseason they had. They should be better.
Hmm.
But surprised me that they went kind of all in to get better. I thought they were just going to kind of cruise out the last year or two of Ovechkin, but good for
Well,
them.
what's
Kind of making
really
some moves.
interesting about that is on now I'm gonna forget whose model it was, but like the first model that came out, I want to say it was Hockey Viz.
Because, yeah,
He had Washington very low, like well
interesting.
below the Sabres,
Huh.
which I
Yeah, I didn't catch
found
that.
interesting.
Yeah, that could be like. I mean, that could be Dubois not
Yeah,
believing that
maybe.
work. You know, is Chikrin, Matt Waugh? What do you think about that? Or Roy
Right, right.
about that? Um, I don't know. I guess I keep saying same thing over and over again, but I just don't think that the cutoff's going to be that high. So I think there's too many teams that'll be fighting for it. That'll
Okay.
beat up on each other.
I don't think that's
So
unfair.
I think that's the good news is you're probably going to be again for the second year. It'll be the third year in a row that 91-92 cut, and I think that there is the potential to get there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I don't disagree.
running it back a little bit, popping in reverse as I'm trying to very hard squeeze the table and not cough as I talk here. Um, Good old COVID will get you. I want to kind of break this down now as we go through. So now we're going to get a little
Okay.
bit deeper. So we're going to start with the forwards. And I'm going to start with you again because I think
Okay.
I have a lot to say too. The forward group. What is your. We can answer one of two ways. One, what's the thing that you think is the most interesting to follow with that this year? Or two, what is the thing that maybe has your attention that you're most interested to see?
I need to see. Can it be more than one thing?
Absolutely.
All right. Because I think I've got a couple things, right? I think one of the plot points that was big last year that has kind of got lost in the sauce a little bit this offseason, they desperately need an improvement from Dylan Cousins, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I know you listed him as one of your key players, I believe, in
Yep.
the article series you did, right? So you're
Yep.
kind of on board with that to a
100%.
degree. Now I'll say this: I think that let's say, clearly defined roles they have at forward right now bode well for them, because I think part of the struggle, not even just for Cousins, for several forwards last year, was that Don Granato had this allergy to keeping lines together for more than like 8 seconds. And every coach juggles lines. I'm not, I don't think this is EA Sports where your lines stay the same all
No.
season.
Yep.
I get that, right? But I do think, to an extent, if you're just switching it up every single game, you're going to really struggle, and your players are going to struggle to find a groove and to, I don't know, create any kind of consistency, any kind of rhythm. So I like that Cousins and his line mates are all very much scoring line players. His projected line mates, I'll say, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because you've got him out there with Benson and Quinn to start, and that looks pretty awesome. And I do also believe that Jack Quinn is one of those rare wingers when healthy, which is the key. But I think
Mhm.
he's one of those rare wingers where he can have a positive impact across the board on his line, right? Which you look at a type of center, right? Usually as the prototype of the guy who can, have that, I guess, across the board positive impact on his line mates. But I think he's
He
one of
might
those
play
rare
center.
wingers who can drive an entire line. And so if you're going to try and revitalize Dylan Cousins, having Jack Quinn on his wing, you could do a lot worse than that. And that kind of segues me into my next point here. Jack Quinn being healthy all year is a huge factor, because I don't think it's a stretch to say he's one of their top 4 forwards when healthy. That might
And he
be,
showed it last year when he was
he
healthy.
showed it last year, right? So, that's a big deal, because when he's not healthy, I mean, I don't like the with or without you wins and losses shit, because like that's dangerous.
Hmm.
But without Jack Quinn, they struggled last year. I mean, and with him, they're pretty magnificent. So I think there's something there. Um, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say it's directly correlative, but add forward those two guys, I think, are the big secret factors to me. Because like I wrote today, I think Tage bounces back, like you just mentioned, with his hand being presumably healthy. I think you'll see a pretty significant bounce back there. And with that, I think you get bounce backs from Tuck from a production standpoint. I think Paterka being on that top line is going to be extremely helpful. And then, you've got your bottom six, which, my second to last article I wrote was about them. And I call them the Wizards of OZS, because they're just guys who can thrive in kind of crappy offensive deployment settings. And I don't know. Again, it just goes back to that point of defined roles. And I think everyone on this team is going to understand what's expected of them, especially at forward. I talked for a
Yeah.
while there. I'll let you
No,
get some
that's good.
words in.
No, perfectly good. To go back to your Quinn thing, I went and pulled it up when you were talking. So I talked about this very thing in the article I did for him, as him being another one of my key guys. So I went and pulled the numbers, and I knew I had it in there. So
Mhm,
without Quinn, their goal differential was 51%. With Quinn, 53%. Expected goal differential without Quinn, 46%. When Quinn played, 49%.
'kay.
Shot share without Quinn, 49%. With Quinn, 52%. So
So not earth-shattering, but significant.
the expected goal differential is a significant one, and that
Right,
makes sense. When
and
he
it makes
plays,
sense.
he creates more offense for you.
Mhm,
And I think that's kind of what you were going to, is him on that line being that, offensive driver. While Cousins, I think, has that potential.
mhm,
I think Quinn has shown throughout his career, like you said, when healthy, and that's the important part, that he can be that player. And I agree. I think he's he's huge. He's a huge part of it. I mean, look into this now. Like I'm reading it as I'm talking, which always isn't a great thing, but uh they
I'm so
scored two
glad to hear
point
that.
they scored 2.8 goals per 60 when Quinn played. They scored 2.53 without him. Their shot quality was 2.39 expected goals per 60 without Quinn. It was 2.66 with him in the lineup. Just
'Kay.
goals and expected goal differential, like, was just significantly different.
Yeah,
And for a team that's looking to find their offense again, I think that's an important part to add back in it. Um,
agreed.
I agree on Cousins. I think that was a good call out by you. Um, it's a big season for Cousins
Mhm,
because let's say they don't make the playoffs this year. There's that world. I think we get to the end of it, and if you look around and you say, "Well, this is year what 4 of this group, this core,
Mhm.
someone's got to go overboard." I think Dylan
Right.
Cousins might be the one you grab by the back of the shirt, and he might be the one.
Okay.
Maybe if you think about Tage and Darlene and Power and they're core guys, it's basically all the guys with letters too.
Mhm.
I mean, Tuck can be another one with only 1 year in his contract. He could be the one that they kick out the door. If again, if things don't, excuse me, holding in a cough. If things don't go right, um, that scenario I think is very possible.
Mhm.
Now, a couple other things from a forward standpoint that I'm interested in. Um, but yeah, Paterka. How does that look in the first line? You know, it went great last year. Preseason looks awesome. How does that look? Is he plus 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 on what Skinner gave you the last year or two? Is it the
Mhm.
same level? Is it less if he plays more games there and then more difficult competition? And he's still a young player, and there can be some hiccups.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen. I honestly think he's the breakout player of the season. I think
Okay.
he's going to have a monster year. I think that it's going to cost them between $1.5 and $2 million
Okay.
in a new contract if they would have just done it this summer compared to waiting until next year.
Mhm.
Um, but that's their decision. So Paterka is what I'm keeping an eye on. Ryan McLeod's another one because
Mhm.
when I wrote about him in the article today, I started thinking about it, and I just think he's a great fit. I really
Mm.
think it's an under the radar move that didn't get. I don't want to say didn't get a lot of love, but I think people thought Edmonton made out in that, and we'll see with Matt Savoy. His preseason didn't go as expected, and he went to the AHL, and we'll see where that goes with him.
Mhm.
Um, but for what this team wants to be, what they want to do, what they're going to ask him to do, I just don't think there's much better he could do there.
Okay.
He's not going to be a huge proficient offensive guy, but that's not what they're asking for. So they're asking him to
Mhm.
replace Middlestat but play a different role. They're asking him to be defensively responsible and to match up against other opponents' top lines in some instances. But at the same
Mhm.
time, we need you to produce too. We need you to do
Right.
both. And I think that's what they were going for when they moved Middlestat beyond the other things too. But I think they realized we have our two scoring centers. We really don't need a third. We need some guy who can kind of do both. We can put in
Right.
different situations and it balances. And I think it's one of the things we keep saying here as we go through this team. There's more balance. Scoring lines, third line two way, new log line that might even better than that
Okay.
with your fourth line. So I think having that balance, having that separation, and everybody, and I wanted to mention it, and it came back to my head now, and I think it was a great point by you, is everybody knows what their role is.
Mhm.
Billy Cousins, your role is to go be a second line scoring center. If you can give me some defense, cool, great, awesome. But this is your role. I don't need you to be the guy I'm trying to get McLeod to be. Ryan
Right.
McLeod, this is your role. Fourth line, this is your role. Tage, Tuck, Paterka, you just go out and you score a bunch of goals. That's all I need
Mhm.
from you. Everybody knows now where they slot in. It's not trying to force guys into different things. There's going to be consistency on who you play with. I think there's a better understanding of skill set fits to start
Okay.
the season. We're seeing that. Um, so that's really, I think, a good thing and good for the forwards. One thing I did want to mention before we move to the defense that's going to be interesting to see this year. That might not be on a lot of people's radars, but something I'm looking to see how it plays out is
Mhm.
Peyton Krebs' situation.
Okay.
He was going to start the season 13th forward,
Right.
presumably. That's how it's been the last whatever it was. That's how it was in Germany. It's kind of how it was before they went. Then they were in North America playing.
Mhm.
I think he'll get his opportunities, but where? For me,
Right.
is it going to be a rotation in? I mean, even just thinking about it now, it's going to be on the wing. Like he's not going. They're
Mhm.
not going to rotate Lafferty out unless Lafferty shifts to the wing and Krebs plays center. Obviously, if there's injuries, then he'll go to the middle. But
Right.
let's say logically that's Greenway's spot that he would shift it to at some point. I wonder if it becomes a competition between the two of them for the ice time, at least to start,
Maybe.
and who starts to run with it. and where they want to go as a team, what they want to do as a team. I think that's going to be interesting to follow because of the player that he is. And he signed for 2 years, not one. He did sign a contract for 2 years. So they have some sort of future belief in him.
Right.
To see where that goes and what that means.
I found that curious.
The 2 years?
Yeah.
Me too.
Not that I care, really, but it's a little
small
odd.
money, but yeah, right.
Right.
Hit your wagon to that, and you can just look at it next year.
Right.
I guess maybe it avoids arbitration. That might be the reason.
But like,
still,
are you actually worried about that?
Yeah, it's a 13th forward. What do you
Right.
What?
Like, what? Who cares?
Yeah, he's gonna go to arbitration. Ask for what, $1.3 million? Like,
Yeah.
who
Right.
does that? No, that's a good point. Something I didn't think about as much. Like I said, it's not like a huge deal, but a little interesting.
Little interesting.
The last thing I wrote down, looking at my notes, that I think this all plays into the Greenway, the Kulik situation. I went into training camp thinking, I'm sorry, the Krebs and Greenway. I gave it away. The Krebs and Greenway situation. I think I went into the preseason in training camp, not thinking Yuri Kulik had a chance.
Okay.
Then he had the Prospects Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Very well. He played a game or two, I can't remember, maybe even one game in North America in the preseason relatively well. He created some chances. He was in on plays. He was more noticeable. Good, great. So I started to believe, well, maybe 14th forward. But now I think seeing Krebs as your 13th forward, that I go back to, no, he's going to start in Rochester. Because I just don't, you're not going to have him sit in the press box.
It's pointless.
And I think that's
it's pointless to send him to Rochester too, but I digress.
Well, that's the dilemma you're in now, though, right?
Right.
He's probably too good for that league, but you don't want to make a spot for him here, so
right
now you have him in that spot. And if you think about it, like if you look down at the AHL now, where are they going to put him? Is he going to play wing or center? Because we heard about all summer, they're trying to get him to be a center. He has to work on these things, and that could be, to help his defense and that kind of thing. Is he going to go back to being a center? Or is he going to be a wing? Because you have Austin down there who could play center, but maybe he plays wing. Speaking of Austin, excellent preseason, might have been their best player for the guys in North America.
Right.
Hellenius is going to play center. Mason Yaps plays center. So that's already 3 right there. Unless you're going to move, is it going to move Kulik, or maybe you can move Yaps to the wing? I just think it seems like all over the organization, there's not a clear spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's bizarre because I think he is noticeably better than a handful of these forwards. But I do wonder, does it go back to this emphasis on line identity and deployment identity where Kulik doesn't really fit in that bottom 6? I mean, you can make an argument that he could play where Greenway is currently, right, with McLeod and Zucker. Thank you. I mean, that's an argument you could certainly make. And as much as I've liked Greenway and continue to like Greenway, I did think he was going to be the odd man out here. And I'm a little surprised that he's still on the roster. I don't think adding Krebs back in really changes much as it pertains to Kulik, because I don't think you'd have had him in the press box regardless. Yeah. But it is just another layer of guy there who I think he's better than, who he's going to have to somehow leapfrog. But again, we talk about this every year leading up to the season. And then by week 2, you've got 3 forwards down, and surprise, Kulik's playing 50 games, right? He's not going to not play in the NHL this year.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do think he's ready, and the talent justifies him a spot in the top 12.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. All right, let's shift over to our lovely defenseman. So shout out Rasmus Dahlin, new captain of the team.
Hey.
Talked about that before. Not unexpected, but now official. Good for him. Happy for him. He deserves it. He's been groomed for a couple of years. Awesome, great, exciting. not new, but established himself officially as the face of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
As the defense itself, it was a little worrisome day one at camp when Darlene and Power were together, but then maybe Darlene's injury saved that,
Mm.
broke that up, and then kind of rebalanced out the lines. And now your pairs, you're going to get Darlene Yoki Haru, Power Byram, Samuelson Clifton.
Right.
It's really, I think the Darlene pair is going to be fine because it's Darlene, it always is. And
Okay.
Yoki Haru really only play with one guy, and it's Darlene, so whatever. Hopefully that works out just fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next two that I think are the interesting ones.
All right.
So Power Byram numbers last year weren't great together.
Okay.
But I do think it's something that can work. Now, here's my concern. Concern is you're putting two guys together that are going to play a lot because Power's going to get a lot of minutes that aren't necessarily great covering the front of the net.
Okay.
So one of two things. You got to shelter him with maybe playing more with that McLeod group where he can kind of help you in that instance and cover the middle of the ice, or the other forwards out there can do that. Or you got to hope Power takes a step in that regard, because I don't think you're really ever going to get that out of Byram. I think you're always going to
I
get
don't
that
think so
solid
either.
defensive play, and you kind of just got to live with that and hope that everything else can, overcome that. I think it puts a lot of pressure on Power, but I don't think it's unwarranted pressure. I think it's something that he should be ready for at his age, the potential that he has. But I think that more than the third line, because I think Samuelson and Clifton is honestly going to be a pretty fine third pair. I mean,
Okay.
Samuelson has the potential to be a top four defenseman before. He's done it. Clifton had his ups and downs, but I think if he has more stability of a defensive minded player like Samuelson, as long as he can stay healthy, that'll work just fine. But I think that Power Byram pair is going to go a long way in telling us how long the other two stick together, as long as everyone stays healthy. So unlike the forwards, I think if everything works, those are going to be your pairs for a while. Just makes the most sense. But if you have that Power Byram thing that doesn't work, then I get nervous that we get back to, well, let's just put Darlene and Power together and see how that goes. I think that could be
Right. That could be a nightmare. Yeah, I guess my biggest thing, and I know that there's some historical precedent there for it not sucking completely. It really bothers me that Henry Yoki-Haru's back on your top pair. Like, and again, I know that anyone can play with Darlene and whatever, but just looking historically at how Lindy, in terms of time on ice, right? How Lindy Ruff deploys his pairings, I mean, it's more balanced. So I'm not, I guess, as worried as I'd be like last year where Darlene's playing half the game, which he may be, right? He may still be because he's Rasmus Dahlin. He's probably, aside from, you could maybe argue Brent Burns, he's probably the best defenseman Lindy Ruff's ever had.
Yeah.
So I don't want to discount that aspect of it, but I do like, as you said, or as you'd alluded to, the Clifton Samuelson pairing, because I think those are two guys who can handle a little heavier workload than your average third pair. Because, as I mentioned in the article I wrote, Lindy Ruff plays his third pairs a lot, like way more than average, which I don't think a lot of people realize. So the balance in deployment in terms of ice time is there, where like last year, or maybe a typical team, let's say your third pairing plays 11, 12 minutes a night. That's not the case with Ruff. I mean, it's like 16 minutes pretty consistently. So I think the even rotation between his second and third pair is definitely a thing. But again, like we're talking about, there's so much talent disparity there that maybe he doesn't do that this time around. So I'll be interested to kind of see if that's just an overarching policy or if that had to do with limited talent in regimes past, let's say.
Yep. Interesting. It's a good point. Yeah, I don't know because, and that's why I go back and forth on this, because you saying that he distributes his minutes to his pairs, and that's the way you should do it. Keeps people fresh, and it. I guess it would be concerning then for me that if he goes to Alien and Power, because that mean that Yoki Haru and Byram are playing together, and that was nightmare scenario.
Mm,
In theory, that would be happening. I guess it could be different, but that would be what they would go to probably next. And then that would mean that Byram and Yoki Haru would play a considerable amount of minutes, and that's not what you want either. And I
no.
think it really does get back to that, like you called out, and the Yoki Haru still being here, which I think is a surprise. I think if Granato was still the coach, that wouldn't be the case. Um, but new coach, Ruff believes in him, 1 year contract, and here we go. But I think it limits your potential if something doesn't work.
Hmm.
Because if the other two pairs behind it falter, then the Darlene Yoki Haru and just pair is going to be mixed up, and then he goes somewhere else, and he simply doesn't work with anybody else. Just
Right.
doesn't. That
Can't do it.
historically, it's not 1 season, it's 2, it's 3 seasons. He cannot play with anybody else and put up positive results on the ice. Just doesn't work.
Right.
So that's my concern with the defense. I mean, that could even be an injury thing. If an injury happens, how do the
Hmm.
pairs shuffle?
Right.
The
Great
good news
point.
is they have good depth. They built this year. They have Bryson still around, Gilbert's there, Ryan Johnson, Clegg. So, I mean, we're not one injury away from seeing Ethan Prow anymore. We have
Mm,
some buffers, some layers that in a hopeful short-term injury situation, you can get by and be just fine.
right.
But I think you could say, and it's crazy to say that arguably 2 of your best players are in this position group,
Hmm.
but really, I think the defense is the one group that can mess this thing up.
No, I don't disagree. I think you're right. And again, it's just I'm not gonna say it's a lack of overall depth because, like you just said, I
Yeah.
mean you're not relying on hell. You may not even see Kale Clegg this year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not for that reason, though. I will say that I think you lose one of those top guys for any amount of time, you're in some big trouble. Because I
Yeah.
think you have one, two, you have two fringe NHLers, you have two very unproven guys with high ceilings, in Byram and Samuelson, who have had significant ups and downs,
Yep.
and you've got two superstars, right? So if either, gosh, both Byram and Samuelson don't take a step, and or you lose one of those top guys to a significant amount of time, or for a significant amount of time, I should say, you're in trouble. And again, it's the one area I think that probably frustrates me the most that they didn't address at all in the offseason. I mean, I know they added Dennis Gilbert, like cool, like more depth, that's fine, but you didn't really do anything meaningful.
Right. All right. The goalies.
Hmm.
The 2 goalies. So I don't really have a lot to say about Luukkonen. I don't know if you do. It kind of it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Can he repeat next year?
Yeah.
Can he not? If he doesn't, what's the fall off? And we'll deal with that how it goes.
Hmm.
I think the interesting thing is the number 2 goaltender. So it's going to be Devin Levi. So I was
Hmm.
thinking about that today. That this is going to be the first time in 5 years at least that I could think of that
Okay.
he's not the number 1 guy.
Okay.
And how is that going to go for him? How is he going to handle being the number 2 goaltender?
Mm.
I think that, and I think that's one of the reasons why people maybe believe that Reimer could be the number 2 to start the season. Then you put Levi in the AHL and he gets his games and you go. Because I
I
was
think it's a
talking to
near certainty though that Reimer is going to be in the AHL to start. I
oh,
think.
100%. Yes, to start. Yes,
Oh, okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
But I'm saying that's why I think there was conversation about it
I
because,
see.
because if you were looking, so in the Discord today, it came up, someone posted a calendar version of the Sabre schedule. And like
Okay.
looking through October, Levi gets maybe 2 games. Like,
Mm.
so they have the back-to-back start the season, so he'll play one of those.
Okay.
And then they have their next game is not until next Thursday,
Hmm.
off game Friday. I'm sorry, Thursday, off day, Saturday. Then they don't play again the following Wednesday. And then you have a back-to-back. So, okay, you have Wednesday, Thursday, Pittsburgh and Columbus on the road. He plays one of those.
Mhm.
Off day, Saturday, you're in Chicago. So you have a 3-day and 4 road trip. He plays one of those games. So that's 2.
Mhm.
So after Saturday, then you're off till Tuesday. You're at home, Dallas. Then for Tuesday, you don't play again until Saturday,
Mhm.
home Red Wings. And after that, you don't play till Monday,
Right.
home Florida. And then we get in November. And then you have a Friday, Saturday back to back. So you have 2 more back to backs in 3 back to backs total in November. So maybe there's 3 games he gets in there. But there's a logical possibility that I'm through November and he's got 5 or 6 games.
Hmm. Yeah. I never really thought about it. I didn't look at it that way. But you're right. I do think he'll get more than that personally, but there's a possibility for sure. And as we
You
all
know, Rock,
know,
if Luukkonen's going, he's gonna go whenever he can go.
right? And I mean, like we just kind of alluded to, Levi is only ever used to playing just an exorbitant amount of games.
Yeah, like ridiculous amount.
Yeah. So I wonder, like you, what extent is that going to impact his performance, right? How much does he rely on that consistent play time to be as great as he is? And I don't know the answer to that. It's something we're certainly going to find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought of.
Because I mean, really, if he plays Saturday the 5th, he
Hmm.
can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days before he sees the net again if he plays October 17th.
Hmm.
I mean, 12 days between starts. That's for a
That's a
normal
lot
backup
of
goaltender
time.
in the NHL, like, okay, yeah, whatever. I'm used to that. But for a
Right.
guy like that who played every game for 2 years at Northwest or Northeastern,
Hmm.
played a ton in the AHL and the NHL last year. I mean, the
Hmm.
guy's played between 40, let's say between 35 and 40 games a season.
Right.
Um, and he's always been the guy. He's always getting the main thing in practice and all that. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes and how it, like you said, how it impacts his performance. I don't think it's nothing, and it's a mental. We know goaltending is very mental. It's a mental change. Like you are, I don't want to say the assistant to the goaltender. Like pull out an office reference here. Uh,
Hmm.
you are like you're not the guy anymore. Your job is to help Lukin in, and
Right.
then be ready if your shoulder is tapped.
Hmm.
It's a much different mindset to be in, especially for a 22-year-old. If he's 31, okay, but for a change in mindset for a 22-year-old, it's tough, man.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. Be interesting to see how that transition is handled.
Indeed. Do you think? I wonder, like in between there. I don't know when you would do it because they play on Friday, Saturdays. If you would like give him a couple spot starts in Rochester, like in between.
Mm, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends how things are going.
Right. I don't love it, but like I wouldn't.
I mean, if they get to the middle of November and he's playing 4 games on November 14th, they might
Right.
be like, maybe we might want to get James up here.
Yeah. Maybe. That's a
But
good
we'll see.
point.
We'll see.
We will see.
Okay. Second last thing on our list,
Okay.
Mr. Lindy Ruff.
Hmm.
So I think we're both of the belief that he's the move of the offseason, right? He's the one that'll give probably in theory will give you the biggest impact.
Yeah.
You know,
I
with
don't think that's unfair to say. It's not like they added any game breakers.
right. McLeod's your biggest player move, and that's like as much
Right.
I love McLeod, that's like you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting what he gets out of them
Mm.
because I think this is the thing for me that I keep coming back to that I put the number stuff aside and I'm like, but You have a coach who's putting in a new mindset that the
Mhm.
players seemingly so far are buying into.
Right.
The GM got the right players seemingly to fit that. And what we've seen again, it's preseason, it's NHL guys against AHL guys and against a German team and the DEL, and so you got a grain of salt. It
Right.
seems to be working. And
Mhm.
then what I think about on top of that is you have a lot of guys being talked about: Quinn, Tage, Tuck, Power, Cousins. You have a lot of guys that are out to prove something.
Mhm.
I think when you have all of that combined,
Mhm.
that is a recipe for exceeding expectations. A
Agreed.
new coach, a new system, roster fits, puts it together properly, hungry players.
Yeah.
And that's how you get that hardworking style. You get that hardworking attacking team because
Right.
they're just hungry and willing out there to prove something. So it's going to be fascinating. The special teams is another part of it. The power play, the penalty kill does that. The penalty kill, I guess you could say, does it maintain last year because it was fine for the most part.
It was fine.
What does he do with the power play? And we just talked about the goaltending too. How does he manage that?
Right.
So there's so much
So
that he
much.
touches. The biggest key, the biggest conduit to the
Yeah,
season.
and in a way, right, Appert is in the same boat.
Yeah.
And
Right.
to a lesser extent, just because, that change in power play philosophy is it's gonna loom large, man.
Huge.
Like it's gonna be a big deal.
Especially for a guy that I don't want to put this. A guy in Appert that the organization is very high on.
Hmm.
I think if he fails in that regard, I think it's going to be disappointing for a lot of people in that building. I think they're hoping that he succeeds and shows that he maybe he can be the next guy in line. When it comes
Right.
to that, I think at Lindy's
Right.
age, he's doing this for a super long time. I do believe there's a reason he signed a 2-year contract
Mm.
because I think it's to get him on the right track and then maybe step aside and let the next person step in. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. But
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
overall, I think Appert's success is important for this team, and I think important for the organization.
Hmm. Agreed.
Are you ready to put your feet to the fire and officially call it out?
I am.
Make some season decisions here.
Hmm.
So I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you. I guess the question. Give me the point total
Okay.
in yes or no playoffs.
93 points. Yes, playoffs.
Wild card.
Hmm.
Wild card 1 or 2.
Wild card 2. I think they squeak in.
Okay. Where do they finish in the Atlantic?
4th.
4. Interesting. So who's all right? I got to ask now. Who's the big
Okay.
team that drops off? I'm assuming we have Florida, Toronto.
We say this every year, and I'm going to look like such an asshole. I'm going to say Boston.
Yeah. You're going to put Tampa 3.
I am.
Yeah. I think I'm there too. I think it's a little bit dependent on if something gets done with Swayman quickly.
Hmm.
Well, I understand Boston has their system and all of that. Like, get out of here. You're not going to
Right.
get me to believe that corporate silos and all of a sudden put up Allmark and Swayman numbers like the last 2 years. No.
Right. No. Not buying it.
Okay. So for me, I'm going to stick with the 92 points
Okay.
that I said at the beginning.
Okay.
They're going to get me to do it again. My
You know they are.
my gut says no.
Okay.
My heart says yes. And the second year in a row, I'm gonna go with my heart and say 92 is gonna get them in. And
I love it.
they're gonna break it.
All right.
I will go, they're gonna finish. I'm gonna go, they're gonna finish. Man. I was gonna say they're gonna finish 5th in the Atlantic because Boston is the wild card 1.
Mm.
But then that's pretty tough when you're thinking about like what the Metro has. You have to beat out a couple teams there.
Right.
So
That's the funny thing about Boston, man. People have been predicting their downfall for like 5 years, and it's
this
just
is like the Red Wings of a couple of years ago.
yeah,
Like you
just
kept
isn't
predicting,
happening.
this is the year, this is the year, this is the year, and it never happened. And then
Just
finally,
happens.
it happens. Well, you'll be right one year.
1 year, I'll be right. If I just keep slamming
Just
the
keep saying,
button,
just keep
at
saying it.
some point, I'll get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta make an official declaration here. Man, this fourth stuff that feels tough to say I can finish fourth. I'm gonna do it. I'll say okay. No, fifth. They're gonna finish fifth. All right, they're gonna
Okay.
finish fifth. Boston's gonna be fourth.
Okay.
Both Buffalo and Boston get in.
Damn.
The
Who
Metro
do they
has had
play?
two.
Who do they play in the first round?
The Rangers.
Ooh.
Because the Rangers will win. They'll win the Metro, and I think they'll have a better record than Florida.
Everyone's gonna freaking hate me for this. I'm saying they're gonna play Carolina in the first round.
You're saying Carolina's have the best record in the East.
I do.
Interesting.
I predicted that last year and was wrong. I'm doubling down though.
Can I ask on what?
What do you mean?
Like why? Why do you think that with Carolina?
I don't know. I think they're very close every year. I don't think they lost anyone of significance unless I'm forgetting something.
No, I mean just they lost Pesci, but that's really it.
Relatively significant, yeah. No, I just think they're really good, and I think at some point they're just going to get lucky in net because they've had just like terrible luck in net, haven't they? Or am I making that up?
No, they. I mean, yeah, injuries and stuff like that. I mean, when Ranta and Anderson were playing, they were good,
right,
but
right. So I don't know.
now
I just
they're both. Is Anderson still there actually, or is
I don't think he is, but maybe he is. I don't know. But I'm just saying. I just think law of averages, which is maybe not what I want to use, but I think it's at some point.
their turn?
Yeah, at some point they're going to get some positive PDO here and put together maybe an above expectations performance in the standings.
And
So
Anderson is still, by the way, is 1 year left in his deal. But I think it is Kachakov's Greece.
Agreed. So that's where I'm at, man.
Off the roster. Goss Despair is there. Orlov's. Their defense does not look great, to be honest. Depending on what you think of Goss Despair. I mean, they have Sean Walker, Burns, Slavin.
So we've never really talked about him. I am an unabashed fan of Goss Despair. I really love him. I think he's great, but he has flaws. I understand that. Like, don't get me wrong. And I also don't know that Carolina's a great fit for his skill set, but I do like him quite a bit.
Jalen Chatfield's pretty good too. Underrated.
Chatfield is an up and comer. He's older than I thought, though. Isn't he like 28?
He's
calling an up and comer at this point is maybe disingenuous, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember looking him up this summer and being like, oh, he's like 4 years older than I thought.
Do you want to guess who Puckpedia currently has as their 7th defenseman in the Carolina Hurricanes?
It's going to be a former Sabre schlub. Yeah. Matt Tennyson.
No.
Okay, who is it?
I'll give you one more guess. He was acquired at the trade deadline recently.
Riley Stillman?
Riley Stillman.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Riley Stillman is
currently... Well, there you have it.
Trying to see if anybody non-roster would take his spot on defense. I don't think so. Yeah. Riley Stillman back in the NHL as a 7th defenseman. Look at that.
He's back, baby.
After a full year in the AHL.
Using that nepotism to his advantage.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Okay. All right. So we'll put the Sabres aside to the end. We do this every year. Mm-hmm. And I think the last few years you've done a good job.
Okay.
You got to pick your cup teams.
Pick my cup teams? I'm going to go with the New York. Meh. Do I want to do that? I know my team in the West. My team in the West
Okay.
is
You want to start?
Dallas. I think the Dallas
Okay.
Stars.
Did you pick them
And
last year too?
I did.
Okay.
I tend to
Thought so.
double down. I
I
can't like
see that.
maybe
I
admit
see
that I'm wrong. Um, God, I just don't even love the East at all. I'm gonna steal your number one seed and say the Rangers.
Okay.
But like, I I don't think Florida's going back. Maybe they do. I don't know. Let's say the Rangers and Stars.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Who do I like? Don't know who I like. You know who I like because it would be cool. They invested the money. Don't know that it's gonna work. Give me Nashville out of the West.
Interesting. That's a pretty big 1 year swoop from like eighth seed to Stanley Cup.
Mhm.
I
But I
like
think
it.
it's gonna
It's
have to be in
bold.
the next year or two for those moves they make it work.
It's bold, man. I
So give
like
me
bold.
Nashville and give me. Can't pick Florida to go back for a third year.
Sure, you
Man,
can.
the East are rough. 'Cause you're like, not like a lot of great teams. Um, man, this is tough. You know what I really want to say?
What do you really want to say?
People will hate me.
I won't hate you.
I There's something there with Toronto for me.
Mm.
I don't know if they're still good enough to get all the way there. I think there's. I'm not gonna pick them, but I don't know, man. I can see them getting on a run.
Did they address like any of the things that always ail them? Like,
Well,
did
they
they
have
make any significant
older
improvement on
goaltender.
defense? Did they? What's that?
Wolves are goaltender.
Okay.
What they did do though, they have the who I think is the best backup in the league. They have Stolars.
Okay.
Defensively, they picked up Tanev.
100 years
They
old.
traded, but still good. Now, I wouldn't have
Okay.
given him a 1, 2, 3, 4 year contract, but
Insane.
for the next year or two, he can play.
Sure.
Uh, Ekman Larson, we'll see. Same thing. I wouldn't have handed him 4
Right.
years, but we'll see.
They gave him 4 years too.
They gave him 4 years. Yeah.
She whiz.
Let me just make sure. Yeah, 4 years, $14 million, 3.5
Wow.
per. But I think you take out the player aspect of it. I mean, Ekman Larson, we'll see. Tanev, I think, still has game for a year or two. Yanni Hakanpää, I think, is a decent 5'6" defenseman you can have. You could do much worse than that.
Mm.
But it's the Craig Berube thing too.
Yeah,
He's going
he
to
does
have
not.
them play,
Okay.
more of a structured system. Again, I don't think it's enough to get there.
I think
But
Craig Berube's entire reputation is based on Jordan Bennington going God mode for 3 months, but that's just me.
see, I thought that too. But then when the interest with the Sabres came about, I looked into it more. He had some pretty good seasons outside of that run,
Mm.
and he had the numbers, kind of backed it up.
Okay.
Okay, I got to pick a team out of the East. You know what? Screw it. I think it would be fascinating for this to occur.
Okay.
Nashville out of the West, Tampa Bay out of the East.
Wow. Samco's Cup.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I am bullish on the Lightning this year. I really
Okay.
am. I think the future is not great for them, but I think for the next year or two, they're going to be back to being an annoyingly good team.
Okay.
As long as Hedman can stabilize. I think getting Ryan
Okay.
McDonough back there while 35 years old is going to help that team.
Okay.
I'm a big J.B. Roser fan. I think having Vasilevsky healthy will help. And their forwards are still 28 years old, 26 years old, 27. They're their main guys. Kucherov's 31, but I don't think he's really showed signs of slowing down. their main guys can still go. Losing Stamkos is going to be tough, but we'll see how tough.
Okay.
Tampa Bay, Nashville.
Called your shot.
Call my shot.
I like it.
All right. 1 hour on the dot. I looked up. Look at that. 1 hour.
Nice.
Anything else you want to get in before the puck drops on Friday at 1 o'clock?
No, man. I think, boy, I think we really covered it.
I think so too. We hit
I got nothing else.
Every angle.
Every storyline.
We definitely probably missed a
Nailed
big
it.
one. Someone's gonna be like, "You guys didn't talk about."
Yeah, I know that happens. We talked about a lot of stuff.
We did. I think we did a good job covering it all. All right.
Agreed.
So it was good to have you back, sir.
Dude, good to be
We're
back.
ready to go again.
Mm-hmm.
Good to be back. I'm hoping it's a fun year because I got to tell you, I can't do it all over again. So
no,
hopefully it's a fun year. A good start would be nice. Winning more than every other game would also be nice. Let's not do that again. Let's try to put winning streaks together while also mitigating losing streaks because they did both last year.
Also mitigating losing streaks. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun year. I think it's going to be a year that keeps people involved throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony, in our back pocket, or in Kevin Adams' back pocket, when he reaches back there, if this team is going, he's got $8 million.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to touch it.
He takes the lock off that back pocket. There's $8 million sitting there.
I'll be skeptical about that forever, but guess we'll see.
We'll see. That's right. You'll never know. You'll never. Well, we will know eventually. Right now.
Yeah, right now. We will eventually know.
Yep. Yeah.
But I also,
get to
whatever.
March and it's still sitting there, and we're like, we were duped again.
Yep.
Well,
when your off-season acquisition is like, I don't know, man. Gavin Bayreuther to like fortify your defensive depth or something, some nonsense.
Yeah. All right. Get it back positive. We're gonna have a fun year.
Yeah.
It'll be a good time.
Getting back into
a positive note. We're not getting into it's the negative Nancy, Terry being cheap stuff. Yep. We're gonna have a fun year. Not only from the team, I think a lot of the stuff going on the site is gonna be super fun too, from a podcast and from a written perspective. Everybody's all in. Everybody's excited. Good times ahead, Anthony. Good times ahead. So,
indeed.
Forward to joining you in the good times to talking about them. I told Anthony this is episode 98. We are 2 away from 100. So we got to start thinking of something fun to do with that because it's 100. So why not? So we'll get back to it. That my brain has too much in right now to think about something fun to do in 2 episodes because hopefully, nope. I'm not saying it. I'm being positive because that 100th episode is going to be good because we're going to get off to a hot start.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be a sad one.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for listening. We will talk to you again soon. See ya.